Welcome to the Wealth Talk Podcast. My name is Zach, your host with Brick by Brick Wealth. And today I have a special guest, a good friend of mine who is a fellow real estate investor. We have been friends for quite some time now. So please, everyone, welcome Zach Randall to the stage. Zach, how are you?
I'm doing great, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Very, very excited to get into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it too. So, for all of you out there, yes, both of our names are Zach. So hopefully y'all don't get this confused. I'll
Yep.
try to make sure y'all know. But
hmm
so Zach is a fellow real estate investor like me. I have to say this though, he is not even 30 yet, so he's young, as they say, still wet
Uh,
behind the ears.
I'm catching up to you. I'm catching up to you.
So being a young real estate investor, the first thought that comes to everyone's mind, he has to come from money. But I know you personally, we'll get into your story, and I know that's not the case. So for
Right.
everyone thinking he's from money, his parents must be multi-billionaires, whatever.
hmm
No, I know his story. He's going to share in a minute, but just real quickly, me and Zach have been friends for a few years now,
Yep.
and I remember talking to you. Was it last year? At an event that we were at that we actually both got to speak at. And
hmm
it was kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And just to see our mindset and how we've kind of grown up over the past few years, especially kind of through this whole pandemic,
Right.
our mindset has changed completely from where we were maybe 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Because
hmm
I know you, me and you kind of like some of the same things, and our mindset has shifted.
Right.
And I appreciate that. So why don't you give us a quick, just background about yourself, who you are, what you do for work, and then we'll get into your story from there with investing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely been a journey, right? Just like all of us throughout our lives, it's been a journey. And sometimes you just look at where you're at and you have to ask yourself the question, like, man, how did I get here, right? But for myself, I grew up, the oldest of three kids, lived with my mom. I went back and forth between my parents. My grandmother moved in with us a little bit later. And my mom, she was an entrepreneur. She had her own daycare. She went to, I remember growing up at home, and my mom would be managing the business during the day. And then at night, she would go out and go to class and go to school. And she worked hard to take care of myself and my siblings, and to give us, the best life that she could. And so that really taught me a lot, right? Seeing her do what she had to do to take care of the family. It was always promoted amongst us. Make sure you go to school and just everything you do with everything that you can, and do your best. And so as I grew up,
Yeah.
I continued to take that on, right? The community I had was outstanding. I always had the support to be successful and to succeed and kind of to achieve my goals. And so as I got older, I graduated from high school. I went to community college for 2 years. Um, University is expensive, right? So
Right.
sometimes you have to make that smarter decision. Like, I'm gonna save me some money and I'm gonna go to community college. But the same thing, I didn't let that be discouraging to me. And say, look, whatever I'm gonna do it the best I can. And so I was in and out 2 years, very focused. And from there, I was able to transfer to university. And so I
Yeah.
graduated. I actually graduated during the pandemic. So
That's
we all
tough.
know it was
Man,
rough,
that's a
right?
tough one.
You
Not a
start
lot of
college
people
and
made it through the pandemic saying they can graduate. That's a
yeah,
tough one.
yeah. You start college and like the number one thing you look forward to is walking across the stage, right? And so it was what April of 2020. I was supposed to walk the stage in 2 months, and then the world
Mm,
shut down and everything disappeared.
man.
But that was kind of a reality check of really like why am I doing what I'm doing, right?
Right.
I know you mentioned the mindset, like, am I doing this just to walk across the stage and get acknowledged for other people? Or was there something more? Like, am I doing this for myself? Am I doing this for my
Yeah.
family, right? And so from there, I graduated school. I worked for a couple years, and during the pandemic, that's really when my journey in real estate got started. We were all sitting at home in the four walls of our house and like,
Mm,
man, what am I gonna do? Like, and
yeah.
so one day I built up the courage. I reached out to a very dear friend, mentor, very experienced in the real estate world,
Yeah,
And
same
I
mentor
just
as mine. So,
yeah,
yep.
same. We had
Mhm.
the same mentor. She
Yep.
helped us get started, and just kind of asked the question, like, "Hey, what would it take for me to, take
Yeah.
that next step, purchase a property?" And she took
Yeah.
the time with me to sit down and looked at my finances and what I had going on. And she told me, like, let's hurry up and get to it. And I didn't even realize I was in a position to
Yeah.
get started.
And honestly,
And
so many people I've talked
mhm,
to a lot of people, and they say the same thing, like, "Where do
right.
I start?" I just actually recorded and did an episode where I asked the same question to people, "Where do I start?" Like, that is the
Yeah.
number one question all new investors ask, "Where do I start?" Like, and most people, and this goes with real estate just in general, whether you're buying a primary, a lot of people don't even know they can afford to buy a house. They
Yeah.
think you
I
need
had no
all
idea.
this money, you need all kinds of stuff, but it's very interesting because now you're in your career, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, in my career, and it's amazing because, like you said, people don't know what it really takes to get started, right? You hear things on the news, you hear things on social media talking about like good luck to this generation trying to buy a home. We're never gonna be
Yeah,
homeowners and all like you hear all this. But then when you really start to take a look at, what you have, being responsible and save your money and you have that goal in mind, it is achievable, right? And so I think that's a really big reality check that I had is like, wait a minute, like I can do this,
yeah,
right? This is possible, this is feasible, but it
absolutely.
started, like you said, where do I start? And I know sometimes a lot of us we have that own question within us, like, where do I start? I wonder if I can. But you have to
Yeah,
externalize, like you have to ask somebody, you got to reach
yep,
out, you got to get the knowledge. If you're just sitting asking the questions in your head, like you're not going to get the answer. And so that was the
absolutely.
biggest first step for me is like, hey, I reached out, I asked, and because someone was experienced, they had the knowledge, they had the resources, they had the network. They pointed me to my loan officer, my real estate agent, everything I could have needed. They knew resources I
Right
needed
there.
for
Yep.
remodels and everything. All started because I built up the courage, or I got to the point where I wanted it enough to finally ask that question.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And so with that very first start that you got, now you're armed with all this information. You know, all right, I know what I need to do. I've saved up some money. I've been pre-approved. I've got everything set up in place. What did you do? What was your first step? Because you have a very interesting first step where it was kind of like you buy a house, but you had to do some stuff to it. It was an interesting
Mhm.
situation. So
Right.
what happened with your first property?
So my first property, I was going around looking, and I ended up purchasing just a single family home for myself to move into. We all know like the real estate market during the pandemic was crazy.
Yeah.
The homes were super overpriced, and so as a first time home buyer, that was even intimidating, right? You're walking into places and you're like, man, this is out of my price range. I can't afford this. Like some of it can be pretty discouraging. But again, the support system is so important. My first home, it was a little bit of a fixer upper. Like it was gutted when I bought it.
A lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. When I went and did the walkthrough, there was no floors, right? For the majority of the house, like they had tore up all the carpet. There was still some laminate on the floor. Some of the cabinets didn't work. Like there was just stuff going on. There was a couple leaks in the roof and all that type of stuff. And so I walked through the home, and any person looking for like something that's already ready, you would have walked right out of there and like this is not it.
Right.
But again, I had some people with some experience and they saw that it had good bones. They're like, oh, if you just put a little work, a little equity, right? Um, this is perfect for you.
Yeah,
And
and
I didn't see it
that's
at the
huge
time.
too, because
Yeah.
not a lot of people would have or a lot of people would have walked away from it like you said,
Yeah.
but they could have missed out on a huge, huge
Mhm.
opportunity like you did.
Right. Yeah, and it was within my price range, and I just had to put a little extra work, learn
Love
how
it.
to paint and call some vendors and watch some YouTube videos and figure out how to patch a hole in the wall. So like some of those things, it took some learning, some knowledge.
Yeah,
But once we saw the potential, like man, we could really make something out of this. Um, it it was like, all right, well, if you think I can do it, someone else had courage in me to think I could do it, and I said, okay, well, maybe I can do this. And so bought the home, and day one, the moment I bought it, we I did as much as I could to it. I got new paint, new carpet, new laminate floors. I got the work on the roof, got that done.
yeah,
I had to start replacing trim on the windows so there was no leakage or no water damage coming in, and replace dry rot. fix up the yard because it wasn't being managed. There was a pool in the back and weren't taking care of it. So we had to shock it and clean it and buy a new pool filter. And I learned how to refinish the cabinets on my own. And so, like, all of this
Man.
stuff, I'm acquiring skills for myself, right?
Yep.
And so I'm learning, like, man, if I want to do this again, I know what it takes. And then I also even saved myself some money learning how to do some of that
Mhm.
stuff. Hopefully do it right the first time, measure twice, cut once. You learn some of
Right,
these
right.
things. And there's some things you're just going to have to get people to come in and do, plumbers, things that might be a little higher risk, whereas like electricity, gas, of course, you have those people come in, but
Yeah.
yeah, did
Certain
a
things you
ton of
don't
work
wanna
to the
do.
place. Yeah, yeah, did a ton of work to the place. And I lived there for 2 years and it was great. Was able to house my friends when they came into town, have people over. And
Yeah.
it was a really, really great opportunity for me and amazing springboard to get me started in real estate investing.
Yeah, so now you have this property and it's your primary home,
Hmm.
but now you've moved, you've switched locations
Right.
geographically
Hmm.
for other reasons that we will leave a mystery. But now you have this asset because initially a primary home is always a liability, doesn't really make you any money.
Right, right.
Now because you moved and you listened to someone who knew. Now all of
Mhm.
a sudden, you have an asset that is producing cash flow. So
Mm,
how did that transition happen from this first house being your primary residence to now it's an investment property?
right. Yeah, I think that's major, right? For me going into it, like I mentioned, I was pretty young when I bought my home. I was only 23 years old. Even in my mindset, I know we talked about that earlier going into it, it was never to stay there forever. So I always had the intention of I'm gonna do as much as I can to fix this up, make it a comfortable place for myself to live. I'm gonna make it a home while I'm here. But always in the back of my head was, when the time is right, um, get the home in a state where if and when I move out, it can start to become a cash flowing, and I can be able to rent it out and add it kind of to my portfolio. And that was always
Yeah.
the goal and the intention. And so as I kept that in mind, even that will start to dictate some of the decisions that you make. What parts of the home do you invest in, which may be more important, and which kind of parts where if it's just kind of more surface or just more visual, like okay, well
Right,
maybe
right.
that can wait and I can save my money in those areas. And so now, actually, believe it or not, exactly haven't talked about this yet, but I just got a text yesterday from the property managers who are looking after the house and said they found a tenant for me. So
There we go.
officially, yeah, right. So officially, we got the deposit and everything. That
Nice.
home mortgage is going to be paid for. It's going to be cash flowing. And like you said, it's no longer just a liability and a debt
Yeah.
mortgage that I pay off every month, but it'll be
Yeah.
appreciating in value. It'll be cash flowing positive, right? And so now it's become an asset, an
Yep.
additional stream of income for me to add to my real estate portfolio.
Yeah. There we go. That's how we do it here. We
Yeah.
breaking
Yeah,
news.
yeah. Yeah, breaking news, yeah.
Love it. So going back to what you said earlier, there's two parts that I kind of want to mention because a lot of people that are going to listen to this are brand new.
Right.
They either have very limited or no experience with real estate investing.
Mhm.
So, two-part question. Number one, what was, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but what was the biggest question that you had before getting started? And then how did you overcome that? You mentioned it earlier, but let's talk about that again because I think that's really huge. Is this one question that I guarantee that you had,
Right.
everyone has because it's a
Yeah.
very important question. So what was that for you?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest question is how and where do I start?
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
You have no idea. If you don't work in the real estate world, like, you just don't know you don't know how it works. So you don't know what you don't know. And so the first step is going and getting that information. Now, a lot of it, we're so, inundated with, uh, just resources and stuff today. Sometimes it can be difficult to find like what's the truth. We see stuff on
Mhm.
social media, on the news, and all type. Like, you just hear so much, and you hear different people's opinions. Like, this is the
Yeah.
way this law works. No, it doesn't. It works like you have
Yeah.
no idea who to trust, what's going
Yep.
on, and
That's
so
everywhere.
yeah, you just have too much information. You don't know what to believe anymore,
Mhm.
and so for me, going and asking those questions when you talk about how did I overcome it, asking those questions to the right people who you trust. And I think
Yeah.
that was major, right? Like I said, my
Absolutely.
home it wasn't pretty. When I walked through it at first, it wasn't pretty. And so if
Yeah.
someone who, but someone I trusted told me like, "No, Zach, you can do this, and it has good potential." And because I trusted them, like that gave me the confidence to believe and trust in myself that okay,
Yeah.
maybe I can do this. But maybe
Yeah.
someone who you don't know or don't have your best interest in mind, they might, oh, pass this up. But it was a really, really great opportunity for me. And so I think
Yeah.
that's the first thing is like if I wanted to learn how to change my oil or change a tire,
Right.
like you don't even know where to start. Like what tools do I need? And
Yep.
what equipment do I need to go buy when I go to the store? Like you don't even know where to start. And so the
Yeah.
first step, you gotta ask those questions.
So
And I
how
feel
did
like that's very
you I know you overcame that in a
yeah.
very specific way. And I've been there, done that, same program, same
Mhm.
mentors. But if there was one way, like just one simple, this is how you overcome that question of where do I start? Where would you say any new investor should start? What is the one point? Like, I'm going to tell you to start here. This is where you should start.
Hmm.
So I'll tell you where I think people should start. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
me.
Let's hear.
In my opinion, I always think people should start with talking to someone who's been there and done that.
Yeah, that's good.
Because in anything, not just in real estate investing, you're mentioning changing oil. Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to go talk to a mechanic who has
actually.
been doing it for a while,
Oh yeah.
who's made mistakes, who's
Mhm.
learned how to overcome those mistakes, but
Right.
also they ask the same question and learn from someone else.
Right.
So what do you think? How would you approach overcoming that first question?
Yeah, no, I think it like I mentioned, going to the right people who you know and trust, and I think experience is valuable, right? You can't
Yeah.
buy experience, right? The only way you can buy experience is with time.
Yep.
And with time comes trial and error. With time comes success and failure, right? And so with that, you get the different perspective, right? Someone who's been in your shoes before. I understand how you feel. I know this can be scary, but right. And sometimes even going to multiple people, right? Even if I
Mm,
was going to the
That's
doctor and I had something going
that's
on,
good.
I get
Yeah.
I get multiple opinions. Like, man, let me go
Yeah.
get a second opinion, right? And that might even help calm your nerves if you're like, man, all the same people I
Yeah.
talk to are saying the same thing, right? They're like, oh, okay, so maybe this is true. Maybe this is how it works, right? And
Yeah.
so
I
I
love
think
that.
again,
Yeah.
asking those questions to someone you know, someone you trust, you add on someone with experience, and don't be afraid to get multiple opinions. Reach out to multiple people to help
Yeah.
build, right? Because there's some strength in numbers, right?
Yeah.
From California, the Warriors were onto something when they talk about strength in numbers. Like
Yeah.
there is value in
Yeah.
getting some of those different perspectives and saying, okay, getting the
Absolutely.
just confirmation from different people. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
no, and even to your point, that's very interesting because I didn't really think of it like that, but that's so true because even in the real estate world, you got people who are extremely good at residential primary, primary house buying and selling. They're just so good at it. They have the
Right.
customer service. And then even within that, you have people that are great at luxury listings, some
Yeah.
people that are great at just normal or at new homes.
Right.
So there's tons of people. So I love that to surround yourself with not just one person, but multiple
Mhm.
people. And I
Yeah.
think that's huge.
Yeah, even when
Um,
you like too, you talk about going to the doctor, they know there's like specialty
yeah,
doctors and like,
yeah,
man, I specialize in this. I might be a bone doctor, but I only focus on the spine. Or like, they have
right.
specialties. And so even in real estate, people they may have specialized in a certain geographic area. Like I
Yeah,
only work in this state or this county, or I do multifamily, or I do
yep,
single family, or I do flips. I know you like those, right? I buy
yes,
distressed
yeah,
homes,
yeah.
fix them up, right? So
That's
there's
right.
even within that, there's real estate so broad, and depending on what your goals are, right? You may be a married couple looking for a forever home. That might be a different audience, a different person you want to speak to, versus I'm looking to buy a fourplex and live in one, rent the other three. Like whatever your goals are, right? Um,
Yeah,
they it might differ, and
yeah,
the advice from those two people, depending on what your goals are, it could be completely different, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
just keeping that
No,
in mind.
I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah,
So now that you have this home and breaking news, it's now cash flowing for you. You got
yeah,
a
it's worked
renter.
out.
So
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank God.
So
Yep.
now let's talk about your first, I guess, if you want to call it real experience buying an investment property. Like this is going to
Mhm.
be you're specifically going into this process buying an investment property.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about that quickly about how that process was, because now you're kind of, your feet are wet, you kind of know,
Mhm.
a lot of the terms, you have a good idea of a plan.
Right.
How was your first experience buying a rental property?
Yeah, so a lot of the same principle, like a lot of the principles are the same, right? You got to go through it, got to get a down payment, you got to pay your more, like all these things, you got to do inspection. So it's similar. However, when, like I mentioned, when the goal is different, the approach may also vary. So when I bought my single family home for myself, I went into it, had to put my money down, so on and so forth, and it was more of like a personal individual walk, right? You're talking about going to something for investing, looking just for rental property. Man, the terms on the loan may change. Like you can no longer put 5% down or 10% down. Like you got to put 20, right? So even some of these things, it changes, right? And so my approach, again, I think I mentioned this early, is not just doing what I do for myself, but for my family, for my community as well. And so I actually reached out. What I did is I got, my family together, my mom and my grandmother. I said, look, let's look for an opportunity to help build and strengthen the family, right? Like I
Yeah,
know I bought a home, but let's add this mindset as a family. Let's start to create some generational
yeah.
assets and wealth, and
There we
let's do
go.
it together.
Yeah,
And so what we did is we put our money together. And of course, when you do that, I mean, by myself, I can only go so far. But now if we do something together, well, if we have individual, maybe now we just double the opportunity that we can
yeah,
pursue. And so we put our money together and we searched for a rental property. And so it was a different perspective. We knew we had to put more money down. Um, the markets we looked in were different. So we bought out of state, right? It
yeah.
made a little bit more sense. The barrier for entry was a little bit lower. And so that's what we pursued. We bought a duplex on the complete other side of the country in North
Literally.
Carolina.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
literally coast to coast, complete other side of the country. But it was a great opportunity. And then again, I mean, I couldn't have done it without people that I trust within the network
Mhm.
who had your best in mind. I mean, I to this day, I've never been there in person. Like I've never
Yeah.
seen the property in person. I've never walked
That's
through the front door. But
that's crazy,
yeah,
because most of the time, as a real estate someone who's
right.
coached people, the first thing is always like, all right, try to find something local.
Yeah.
But this is the exact situation where I would say, yes, it makes sense to go out of state, because not
Mhm.
only is it easier, like you said, the entry to get into it is easier, but
Right.
you have people that you trust in that area
Mhm.
that can actually manage your properties. And
Yeah.
that's huge. Not everyone has that, but
Yeah.
that is massive. So this
Mhm.
property, duplex, other
Yep.
side of the country,
Yeah.
how do you like it?
Oh, it's been good to me, right? So it's been filled. I think you know, we bought this back last year, maybe May or June. And it's been rented out both sides 6 months. It cash
Nice.
flows
Nice.
tremendously. And so it's been great, right? And the goal is you let it sit, you let it appreciate, we collect the money, we take care of the tenants, we do good by them, they do good by us. And the goal is you take one and then you continue to grow it and you continue to grow and hopefully be able to duplicate the process, replicate it, and buy another one day. So
Yeah, I love
yeah,
it.
it's been good.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have people out there who help take care of things come up. You have all the contacts. You call. Of course, the stuff comes up. The oven went out. We call the warranty. They were so
Yeah.
there's going to be things that you have to
Right.
take care
Right.
of and manage. But
Yeah.
it's not too much to where it's not worth pursuing. I would say
Absolutely.
the reward is worth it, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard to see that because you have to scale that wall and you do have to get through it. It's not just going to fall into your lap.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
if you have people who you trust who are feeding you the right information, you're making wise decisions, and you're not going outside of your means or doing anything that you can't afford, and you've done the proper research, then it's definitely
Yeah.
worth it. Can be very
Yeah.
profitable.
Absolutely. You know how I feel about real estate investing. So I
Yeah,
1,000% agree with you. It's
yeah,
worth it. And that's why, to your point, having someone in your corner,
yeah.
someone told me this, you always need to have reserves for
Mhm.
when, not, and I say this all the time, for
Right.
when things go wrong, not if, because it's guaranteed. Whether it's
Mhm.
your primary house, your rental, your car, your
Yep.
health, something is always going to happen. And if you're not saving or planning for that, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah, you really are. I mean, it
Yeah.
like you said, it's not when,
It's
it's not if, it's
if, it's
when.
when.
Like,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
going to happen. Something's gonna come up. I mean, the world we live, like, there's just always something.
Always
But
something. Yep.
even, even just basic maintenance things you have to take care of, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's the yard and just make sure, I think I watched a video of yours recently. You talked about vacancy, right? So just keeping
Mhm.
things in mind,
Yeah.
and we may have to cover this. And so that's even one of the reasons of the approach.
Yeah.
The rental property, I could, you can take out distribution every month, but even sometimes the best way to treat it is just let it sit, let it
Yep.
grow. Like, you understand its investment, it's going to continue to go on its own. And if you
Yep.
need it, of course, that's something you can always dip into. But
Yeah.
always, you want to keep yourself safe. Again, if you're buying a rental property, you bought it to be an asset. You bought it so that it
Mhm.
can help you, not to be a liability. So if you're not saving the proper reserves,
Yeah.
then you are
Setting
at
yourself up for
very high
failure.
risk. You're at very high risk, and if
Yeah.
you're creating a liability for yourself versus creating an asset that can supposed to help you and continue growing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. You want to set
Right.
yourself up for success. And we all know how people get with money.
Mhm.
It's when you have it, you feel good. When you're
Yeah.
trying to find it, you're like,
Right.
wait a minute. But then when you're trying to find it because you need something because it's an emergency,
Yeah.
that's like the worst 911 type situation. So
Right.
I
Yeah, you
love
wanna
it.
be able to foresee some of these things, right? Like,
Yep.
it's gonna happen, and so you wanna make smart decisions, you wanna be wise, you wanna foresee some of these things that might happen,
Yeah.
and this is just in life, and then you wanna hide yourself from it, and some of that is building up some cash, making sure that you have that
Yeah.
reserve so that you can foresee when some of these things might happen, and you're
Yep.
protected, you're hidden from it, it doesn't become a liability, but you're like, "Oh, I thought about
Got
this, I'm
it.
prepared."
Yep.
I've been diligent, I've been responsible, I've been wise, and I can just cover it and just keep going like nothing ever happened because this is what I
Yep.
prepared for.
Exactly. Yep. No,
Yeah.
I love it. So, all right, let's talk about some of your plans moving forward quickly because it just doesn't stop with all right, you get one. Now, if that's who you are and you're listening and you just want one, that's great. But it
Mhm.
really shouldn't stop there, especially if you're young.
Yeah.
You should always get more. So, why don't you just quickly tell us what some of your plans are kind of moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you alluded to earlier in the conversation. Yeah, I recently moved, so where I am, where you see me at right now, I don't own this home. I'm renting right now, but I think probably the next step, like the next closest one to me, is hopefully buying another maybe single family home for myself, right? Something that I can invest in, and I can plan on living there. But even too, as we mentioned, my first single family home is being rented out, so that's working for me. Duplex also working out, and so definitely would not be opposed to doing either one of those again. But I'm kind of the mindset and perspective. I know you talked about that. Is that continuous growth and constant improvement? And so started with single family, moved up to duplex. I would love one day here soon in terms of investing to take a look at a fourplex, increase those number of units, small apartment complex, and just continue to compound and continue to grow. Of course, I'm super thankful and grateful for the opportunity that I've had. Like, just like you said, I've got
Yeah.
one. I mean, that was more than enough. I have two. I'm like, man, I am so blessed and thankful to
Yeah.
be in the position that I'm in now. But also, too, if I have the means to continue to grow, continue to improve,
Yeah.
then absolutely, I want to continue taking those opportunities to learn and to grow, and to
Yeah.
do more. I know you mentioned asking people who've been there before, and ultimately, I would love to be someone where people can look at and be like, man, he did it. How did he do it? And be able to
Yeah.
continue to give back to those so that, and I think that's the whole point why I'm here, right? Like, man, I've done it. It's possible. You can do it too.
Absolutely.
And even as others are asking those questions, I'm still going. There's always going to be something new. I've never bought a fourplex or a part like, but hopefully, I've
Yeah.
never had three rental properties. I just have two. So every step
Yeah.
is new, and we're all constantly learning and going through this together. And we always need someone in our corner, like you mentioned. So
Yeah.
hopefully that can be kind of one of my next steps, something single family for myself, and then continue maybe to grow the size of some of these multifamily units.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are phenomenal goals and all before the age of 30. That's crazy.
Thank
Like
you, brother.
that's crazy. All right,
Yeah,
so one last thing that I want you to leave everyone with. If
sure.
you could just give everyone one piece of advice, just I know you may be afraid. I know you might be kind of fearful, you're worried, there's
Mhm.
all these doubts that come up in our mind and they're all legit, all valid, but they all
Yeah,
make sense. One piece of advice that you can say, "Hey, take this, run with it."
yeah. Ask for help. Reach out, ask the question. I know you're asking it in your head, right? You're asking yourself, but you gotta reach out, give yourself a voice, and ask those um, who can help you. And don't
Yeah,
be afraid. Like, man, this seems too hard. It seems too big. I don't have enough money. You will never know until you ask and kind of go search that out. And so that's the number one thing. Like I said, I was in COVID, stuck in my room, asking myself for a while.
yeah,
And when I finally asked, I didn't even realize I was at a point where, okay, this is possible. And maybe when you ask, if you're not at that point yet, at least you can get the direction on what to do so that you can get there, right? So hey, maybe you're not ready now, but let's put together a 6 month plan, a 12-month plan, 2 year plan, so that
yeah,
you can get to where you want to be, right? And so
absolutely.
don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to set those goals for yourself,
Yeah.
so that you can continue to pursue those in the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect advice. I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's it's perfect,
Yeah.
perfect note to end on. So, Zach, look, thanks. This has
No.
been an honor for me to have one of my good friends on who has been there, who has done that to share
Yeah.
his perspective, his story. Like I told you in the beginning, he did not start with millions of dollars. He did not come from a
I'm with you
multi-billionaire.
guys. I understand. I
He
understand.
understands. Yeah. So again, thank you, Zach, for joining me on the show today. It has been real great. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. To
absolutely.
all the listeners out there, hopefully you have a great day and remember to be in wealth.